Why do I still play Dead by Daylight? It's a question that I and many other content creators receive all the time. From the stale content loop, frustrating bugs, or even lack of developer awareness, it seems sometimes there's not much that keeps players coming back. Now, there is new content added in the form of skins, maps, and DLC characters that can change how the game can be played, some of which are licensed from iconic horror franchises. Even so, many longtime veteran players complain that it's still not enough, and that DBD has been on a downward decline. So, what keeps players interested? Are long-term players blinded by nostalgia? Are the best days of the game really behind us? To find out, I want to take a retrospective look at Dead by Daylight from release to present. I hope you enjoy. Dead by Daylight was released on June 14th, 2016 with 3 killers and 4 survivors. Each character came with their own teachable perks and each killer their own power. The objective was simple: complete all 5 gens and escape while the killer tries to stop the survivors. This was the first multiplayer horror game that granted an asymmetrical playstyle, besides Evolve. Behavior, the developer behind DBD, found success very quickly, as they sold more than 1 million copies within their first 2 months of release. Now, Behavior's success was not met without criticism. Early DBD was pretty messy. It contained a ton of bugs and even had a surplus of cheaters, but it was still very fun. The simplistic nature of early DBD is what drew a lot of people in, and it genuinely felt very casual. Stark contrast to how people view the game in 2024. It was a much simpler era. The most popular content of the time were either funny moments or juke montages. Players were addicted and grinding the game non-stop, but it wasn't without its faults. The balancing had been a bit of an oversight. Infinite windows would never be blocked off, sabot hooks and traps would never regenerate, you could turn the whole map into pitch black with moon offerings, gens could be completed immediately with brand new parts, survivors could be moried on first down, Jack had 2 windows, and even Billy had his notorious insta-saw. DBD's early balancing was nowhere near 2024, but sometimes that's what makes newer games fun. Before players can become competitive and optimize the fun out of matches, you can goof off and win any way you like. But like any game studio, Beaver would have to listen to the demands of players and balance around unfun game mechanics. During the first 4 months of DBD being released, Beaver had put out 33 patches, 1 PTB, 2 new characters, and several new perks. These patches covered a lot of bug fixes and balancing focused around problematic perks and add-ons. Players were receiving pretty consistent updates, and then Behavior dropped an absolute bomb on us. On October 25th of 2016, Michael Myers and Laurie Strode entered the fog, and you could play both in Haddonfield, which blew players away. DBD's first license drop was a big success, and it brought a lot of new eyes towards the game, because who wouldn't want to play the antagonist of one of the most successful horror franchises? Plus, there were a ton of ways to play him too. Lore-accurate Scratch Mirror Myers, Tombstone Myers, even the hilarious Burger King Myers with his unbelievably slow speed. This chapter also introduced the obsession mechanic, and let's just say survivors definitely capitalized with their newest perk, Object of Obsession. Totally not used for BM purposes. To close out 2016, Behavior released yet another map that we know as Backwater Swamp with Ace and Hag as playable characters. While it wasn't as successful as their previous chapter, it introduced our beloved hex perks, like Old Ruin. In 2017, Behavior started the year off with a boom, introducing their first in-game event, the Chinese New Year event. Players were able to take part in celebrations with in-game cosmetics, and especially the new item, the Chinese Firecracker. Behavior saw the immediate success of their first event and subsequently made 3 more in 2017, including the Anniversary event, All Hallows Eve event, and the Winter Solstice. Each of these events added their own lobby ambiance, as well as event-themed items and offerings. Behavior also kept strong with the release schedule, giving us 6 new maps and 8 new characters, 4 of which were licensed, those being Bill from Left 4 Dead, Bubba Sawyer from TCM, Freddy Krueger, and Quentin Smith from Nightmare on Elm Street. This new content was great for the player base. Bill had great perks, Bubba and Freddy were from iconic movie franchises, and Quentin, well, he looked like a Temu version of the original actor. The original content was pretty good too. In the Spark of Madness chapter, Doctor added another horror element to matches with his illusions. Larry's was the first indoor map with a great atmosphere, and Fang added another exhaustion perk. Huntress Lullaby chapter gave us our first range killer and a survivor with great perks, the old Dead Hard for Distance and the Please Report Me perk No Mither. Only issue with so much content was the money. A lot of players didn't want to buy new characters not knowing if they'd like them. Beaver would mitigate this by introducing Splinter offerings, granting players 1 free game with a DLC killer as a test drive. There are also many major balance patches throughout 2017. In April, we saw the addition of the Bloodlust mechanic, which would help cut down on infinites and close out chases faster. Sabot hooks would also start respawning, and exhaustion perks would now have 50% recovery while running. Beaver also decided that Mori should be changed to require at least 1 hook to execute a survivor, and dropping survivors would also incur a higher wiggle penalty. For long-term players who remember, there was a pretty funny dribbling meta that existed. Basically, to avoid decisive strike from affecting tunneling, killers players would pick up a survivor, walk a few steps, drop, and then repeat so they could make it to a hook unaffected. This was obviously patched out eventually, but it was pretty hilarious at the time. With each update, it definitely seemed like Behavior was committed to listening to the community, with their frequent message boards asking for player feedback and their regular developer streams where they spoke unscripted to a chat. They were being really transparent. Also, let's not forget that one time Matthew Coate took a beating like a champ at the Twitch event in Korea, where a stack of survivors absolutely laid into him during a match. What a sporting young fellow. For the year of 2018, Behavior wanted to flesh out the old rank system more by adding the emblem system, which would basically judge a player's performance by tracking their match across 4 separate categories. This would make it easier to tell how you could pip and rank up in each match, as well as more clearly defining win conditions aside from being sacrificed or escaping. You could still pip and rank up even if you didn't conventionally win, as long as you filled the quota of categories. This was back when skill-based matchmaking had not been introduced yet, and you would just be matched against similar ranks. The community also received 5 new events, including the notorious Scorching Barbecue and the Hollowed Blight event, which introduced the first blighted cosmetics for killers. We also got 4 new chapters, each with their own killer, survivor, and map. And up until this point, most chapters went off without a hitch. But as many veteran players can remember, Legion's chapter, Darkness Among Us, became one of the most controversial chapters at the time. Sure, Pig was a laughingstock, Spirit had practically 0 counterability, but the Legion was fundamentally broken on release. Even the marketing for Legion had been shown in teasers and had people hyped. The general consensus was that he was an imposter killer, taking on the look of a survivor, then being able to randomly attack them. Others like me viewed it as a take on the split personality trope that was popular in horror. However, what we would receive on release was a big disappointment. Instead, he was an angsty teen running around the map, forcing people to heal for the entire match. The sheer amount of bugs and poor design was also wild. Back then, Legion was able to swing an unlimited amount of times during his frenzy and could even exploit his base power. Basically, Survivor's men timer would start ticking down after escaping a chase, but if Legion started moonwalking while following a survivor, the timer would continue to decrease and eventually down them. It was also possible with specific builds to force an exponentially longer men timer, to the point where it was literally impossible to finish. It's just a few issues with Legion, and if I spoke about each one, we'd be here all day. Speaking of exploits, DBD had a surplus of cheaters at the time, more specifically lag switchers. You see, at the time, DBD operated on peer-to-peer connection, which means a player could see and impact other players' IPs. Many players would take advantage of this by using a switch or a device to intentionally delay the output signal, and while the server resyncs, they could do whatever they wanted. Lag switchers would routinely hold people hostage, and it became so widespread that it even occurred in an official DBD tournament. I wish I was joking. A team decided to blatantly lag switch, and instead of proper action being taken, the host would just deem that only the match would be restarted. Due to the incompetence of the tournament runners, the team was somehow not disqualified and went on to win the entire competition. This would make the potential esports scene a missed opportunity for Behavior, since it was handled so poorly. Server issues also became so bad that Behavior announced that they would finally implement dedicated servers in the following summer. This would cut down on poor connections impacting matches, including poor hit detection, and most importantly, removing lag switching altogether. Lag switching would not be impossible to do after this implementation, but it would be much harder. 2019 was also meant to be a big year for Behavior. 4 new chapters soon to be released, tons of content had been planned out, teasers were right around the corner, and then out of nowhere, Behavior released an early developer build by complete accident. When players booted this new update, they were met with Ghostface. That's right. The developers accidentally leaked one of their most iconic licenses ahead of time before any teaser or announcement. Multiple cosmetics were leaked, as well as an unfinished perk, and this disaster would have definitely been an embarrassing conversation to have with the license holders. And that wasn't all. Players had full access to the character and even developer controls, which made it so players create absolute chaos with any match by easily cheating. They could fly around the map, have infinite dead hards, swap killer abilities mid-match, and so much more. Within this update, it was also leaked that DBD would receive a new battle pass system, and even though it's normalized now, players weren't exactly happy about it. Shockingly, Behavior had also leaked Dead by Daylight Mobile in this update, which would release the following year. This entire update had been a complete disaster for Behavior. Multiple leaks out of nowhere, and they even made their cheating situation worse. Since the developer build had no anti-cheat enabled, it gave cheat developers a safe environment to test their client compliance and likely advance their methods to bypass the current anti-cheat. While not confirmed publicly, it would be safe to assume leaking licensed characters would hurt Behavior's chances with other license holders. And not only that, it ruined the surprise for many players. The developers would frequently make teasers or hints to future killers, and back then, the community loved to theorize who would be the next licensed IP. But when leaks occur, there's no hype or marketing around a new chapter, and frankly, it gets boring. The most popular clues that Behavior would make involve Blight from the Archives lore, Oni's Mask from Yumoka Estate, and Stranger Things posting pictures with the words Dead by Daylight. Pinhead and Chucky would also get their own popular teasers in the form of an audio file spelling Hellraiser and Chucky's iconic knife being displayed on a rack. Everyone loved the hunt for the next killer, and leaks just kind of ruined it. 2019 wasn't all bad though. We saw the first major killer rework for Freddy, and instead of putting survivors to sleep manually, each survivor would have a timer to automatically put them to sleep. To wake themselves, they would either have to find a clock scattered around the map, fail a skill check, or get woken up by a teammate. Freddy could also choose to run dream snares, which would slow down survivors, or dream pallets that gave off the illusion of real pallets. It was nice that Behavior would rework an old killer, but Freddy instantly became way too powerful and would make matches long and miserable with certain add-ons, thus being deemed Forever Freddy. We would also get the addition of Endgame Collapse that did a great job at concluding matches that were being dragged out. Back then, the match would last as long as survivors were alive, which meant players could torment the killer as long as they'd like, or they could have fun getting bled out for 4 minutes. Regardless, this was a great mechanic added to matches and was regarded fondly by the community. Hatch was also changed to always spawn with one survivor left, and to remove the long-standing hatch standoffs, killers would no longer be able to grab survivors jumping into hatch and could instead close it to begin endgame collapse. Surely with this amount of content and positive changes, 2020 would be just as smooth, right? In 2020, Behavior took another step forward to improve the graphics of DBD. In the Realm Beyond update, the first map that would be graphically reworked was Larry's Memorial Institute, and it was just a taste of what they had in store. Each map, one by one, would soon be reworked, improving lighting, tiles, and overall balance of each realm. The Realm Beyond update would be a major step forward for the atmosphere of DBD and was intended to make a hopeful return to that realistic horror setting that all new players experience. And it wasn't just the maps themselves. Many objects such as gens, pallets, lockers, and chests also got a graphical update and were improved dramatically. Behavior also went forward and added the much requested crossplay feature, which exponentially increased the player pool and made queues much faster. It would only be so long till cross progression were added, right? Behavior also made an effort to rework the Doctor, removing the unnecessary stance and adding his AoE static blast and custom chase music. Ruin was changed to no longer give the red sadistic skill checks and instead regress when a survivor was not repairing it. Thank God. Leatherface also got a rework with the addition of his chainsaw sweep charges, and the final major rework of the year, being the most controversial one, was Billy. Beaver decided that beloved killer Billy would be given the overheat mechanic and a substantial nerf to most of his add-ons. This mechanic would basically punish players for revving the chainsaw too much, effectively nerfing him to the ground along with killing multiple different playstyles like Drift King Billy. Overall, it was a terrible idea and the community let Behavior know. Despite this, they didn't let up, and they kept the change for years. The devs had messed up big time already, but it wouldn't be the only troubles they had. Blight's release later that year would be extremely buggy. His bump detection would not work a majority of the time and leave players straight up bumping on thin air. Among other issues, he was just terrible on release, and if you're interested in a full-length analysis of Blight's history, I made a previous video you can check out here. This update also introduced the Sacrificial Ward and Blueprint offerings that impacted basement and hatch spawns. Closing out the year, Behavior released a PTB featuring the twins and Elodie. This is one of the buggiest PTBs today and did not go over well with the community. Victor was able to pounce on survivors hiding in lockers, Charlotte and Victor could block the exit gate, Victor could be held onto forever by survivors, and the list goes on. It was a mess, and only after multiple patches were a majority of the issues fixed. But by then, it was safe to say that most of the community already strongly disliked the killer.
And sometimes you'd get out alive, right? Like, wouldn't that be nice?
2021 was arguably the most successful year of Dead by Daylight. With the release of the Resident Evil chapter, player counts would reach over 100,000 on Steam alone. There was so much added to the game, and yet it remained the most controversial year of Dead by Daylight. Beaver started the year off with a complete overhaul of survivor movement, scrapping it for a more realistic approach. The community was not happy with this, as it made characters more stiff and less flexible. More realism isn't always a good thing, and with this change, it became harder to spin or juke mid-chase. Moonwalking also became decently harder, and while some may shrug it off, moonwalking was primarily used for style points and was something the community just enjoyed goofing off with. Behavior would also end up removing the old ranking system and replace it with grades where people would now be matched against others according to a skill-based matchmaking system. Many view SBMM as terrible in most modern-day games, and that it creates ultra-competitive environments. Oh, you won one game after a 5-game losing streak? Yeah, enjoy going going as a 4 slowdown nurse buddy. The MMR addition to DBD was disagreed with by many veteran players, and yet the developers ultimately decided it would stay. Speaking of which, 2021 was a bad year for the devs. With more eyes on the game, there were more people picking at everything the developers would say. And boy, were there some questionable dev streams. Almo, one of DBD's lead developers, got in hot water for how he responded to players asking for colorblind accessibility.
All right, JC, it's getting really boring just blabbing about colorblind mode all the time. We've heard it a million times. We know. Continuing to badger us about it isn't going to change anything. If it gets done, it'll get done when we have time to do it, or if somebody decides that it's something that should be done.
And while he may have meant well, it came off very wrong. Patrick, another one of Behavior's developers, would become notorious in the community for his snarky attitude during developer streams. And while addressing the community's disdain for MMR, he responded pretty poorly.
Hey, you know, I was playing a game of Survivor and I looped the killer for 7 consecutive hours, and I unhooked, 18 other survivors, and I healed for 93 health states. I fixed 10 generators. It was such an amazing game. I truly am a god amongst mankind when I play Dead by Daylight. But then, right at the end, I got thrown on a hook and I died, and I don't like that counts as a loss. And the idea here is, wouldn't it be nice if you could do all of that and sometimes you'd get out alive? Right? Like, wouldn't that be nice?
Both of these developers have had many of these moments, and Behavior eventually stopped putting them on stream. And I'm sure they didn't mean to be difficult, but it stirred controversy nevertheless. Even Fog Whispers have had their criticisms of Behavior all throughout the game's life. But Dowsy, when giving his feedback towards these new changes, would have his Fog Whisperer status removed and his Twitch shirts revoked. Kind of petty for critiquing the game, and it did not bode well with the rest of the community. How can people who are approved by the developers not be allowed to speak their mind or criticize any changes made to the game? Behavior seemed to be shooting themselves in the foot. You remember NFTs, right? Those stupid monkey pictures that your unemployed friend insisted would take off? I completely forgot they ever had any relation to DBD, but Boss Protocol, who had control over the release of Pinhead, would adapt Behavior's in-game model and make them into NFTs with sunglasses and other accessories. No, I am not joking. Many players and developers were outraged and believed that Behavior had to have been forced to take this deal to get Pinhead in the game. Pinhead was also one of the few characters that had voice lines in-game, and they were shortly removed after the PTB, believed to not return unless players would buy an NFT for exclusive in-game content. Although Behavior would deny this, the NFTs never ended up going anywhere, and Pinhead would eventually get his voice back. Crypt TV, an indie horror series, would also get some original characters as skins in DBD, mainly for Doctor, Huntress, and Hack. Players would eventually ask for a follow-up collaboration, and unfortunately, Crypt TV would announce that they would start doing NFTs to fund their series. This completely killed their brand and any chance of another Behavior collaboration, thus ending the NFT controversy. Modding was a controversial topic within the community, but to the more casual players, it was a lot of fun and completely harmless. Players would mod their game to be able to play with custom skins, backflip after a flashlight save, change their flashlights into lightsabers, or even change Huntress axes to diamond ones from Minecraft. To most people, it was harmless. And then disaster struck. Anyone could have seen it coming, but malicious players started to mod for advantageous purposes. They would remove chase music to hear survivors more clearly, make survivors more visible, and the list goes on. The killing blow to many was the picture of a modded purple trap that made the rounds in the modding community. To Behavior, it kinda got out of hand, and they couldn't verify every single mod, so they removed it altogether. Despite their hand being forced, the community was also understandably mad. A few bad apples had completely ruined it for everyone else. To get around the modding ban though, players would begin to use private servers to continue for fun. They couldn't matchmake and would only be able to play in custom matches. I still miss the modding community, and I wish it could have stuck around, even if some would use it to cheat. Speaking of which, cheating would get really bad during 2021. Streamers would be constantly targeted and hostage during games for up to 2 hours. And considering many streamers would rely on playing the game for their income, the situation was not great. This was also around the time that Behavior made DBD free on Epic Games for a weekend, and it backfired immensely. Cheaters would go on to create thousands of accounts with email generators, and if they got banned, oh well, time to get on a new account with everything unlocked. It got so bad that streamers would be placed on an Excel sheet to be targeted, with their cloud ID, region, and some colorful comments added on. Obviously, anti-cheat is a never-ending battle, but Behavior was drowning, and they couldn't respond fast enough. When most bans are made through reports, tons of cheaters will fall through cracks. Seriously, how does Minecraft have a better anti-cheat than some modern games? This last section is meant for the rest of 2021 since these topics don't really fit in their own category. So I'm gonna rapid fire it a little bit. Stretched res, a way to change the view model of your game, was removed. And honestly, it was for the best. Competitive players could literally see around corners and stretch the red stain for a sizable advantage. And to use it in public lobbies, it was kind of lame. Boons that had been released with Michaela were insanely broken. And it was a really cool concept though. A hex for survivors, but it wasn't finished on release. Survivors would heal extremely fast, and hit and run killers were kind of just screwed. It took Behavior forever to properly balance them, but it was a mess on release. The tutorial for Killer and Survivor were finally added, which really helped new players. Clown would receive his 2-bottle rework, giving him more mobility. Artist was leaked before their chapter even got a teaser. Scourge hooks were introduced, and the Stranger Things chapter was sadly removed from the game. Overall, 2021 was a really entertaining year for DBD, whether good or bad. But man, was it controversial. Despite 2021 being such a crazy year for DBD, my favorite year was 2022, and it's for one simple reason. Woo! Woo! Hey, what's up?
Where did he come from?
Yeah!
Space Billy and Sky Billy had made a comeback as it had flown under the radar in bug fixes. Billy mains were celebrating and already finding tons of spots they could perform in. With Sky Billy, you could do long jumps around the map to go for snipes or just for style points. And with Space Billy, you could literally launch into the atmosphere. Despite some players not being fans, it was hilarious and completely harmless. With Space Billy, you could even get into the roof of Larry's to hide from survivors or get on the roofs of main buildings. Most survivors would be super excited to see it in game, and surprisingly, I found a lot of cheaters while doing it. They would see me hanging out on top of Killer Shack and just enable their cheating client and fly up to me just to hang out. Behavior would eventually patch out Space and Sky Billy, but man, some of my favorite videos would be against streamers while flying around. Overall, it was just a goofy mechanic just for fun, and it's dearly missed. Despite the ban on modding during the previous year, we also saw a rise in modding for custom game modes, maps, and chapter concepts for Springtrap and Slender, to name a few. The community was getting really creative, and I only wish Behavior would take advantage of their talented community more. Players were already creating 2v8 and prop hunt modes, and it would have been amazing if a custom server browser would be implemented in the base game. Behavior would also continue to struggle with cheaters in the form of subtle ones, driving players crazy, and cheater bots destroying every server they invaded. Other than those issues, Behavior did add more quality of life changes. Base get borrow time was implemented, dead hard for distance finally got eviscerated, much to the dismay of the community, and they even tested their not so popular finisher Mori system, which would originally end the game if all survivors were down. This heavily incentivized slugging for the entire match, and even if there was base cut unbreakable, it thankfully never made it to live servers. The old prestige system was also changed. Finally, Legion and Ghostface also got their new chase music, and while Legion's was an absolute banger, Ghostface was it was complete trash. With 2023 rolling around, Behavior had a lot in store for the community. Several major balance patches focused around perks, accessibility, and even some more of the unfun sides of DBD. However, Behavior would find themselves in a pretty big predicament. Two of their most recently released chapters had been largely unsuccessful and drove a lot of the casual player base away. This was due to the fact that Knight and Skull Merchant were easily able to hold a 3-gen for extended periods of time. This led to games being extended to upwards of a full hour before survivors eventually gave up or DC'd. And it got so bad that it even occurred in high-level comp matches, if you can even call it that. And it made DBD look like a total joke. Behavior would balance both of these killers multiple times over the course of the year to slightly alleviate the problem, but players would always find a way to get around it. Some were proud of how long they could extend games and would even antagonize competitive teams regarding it. To mitigate the ongoing disconnect problem, Behavior would roll out bots to replace disconnected players to even the playing field on an already losing match. And while these bots were definitely overtuned at the start, they were a welcome addition. Seriously, they would see through walls and aimbot with flashlights. It was kind of hilarious. The issue with this though is that Behavior still wouldn't remove the DC penalty. So when players had enough, they would just give up on hook. The team wouldn't get a bot and the player was completely unaffected. This problem is still ongoing today, and I'm not sure if Behavior has a plan to fix it, to be honest. It was also announced that the long-standing flashlight interactions would be removed, affecting killers such as Nurse, Wraith, Spirit, Hag, and Artist. I still miss Burning Wraith, and it was such a time to be alive. 2023 had been a little rough, but it wasn't all that bad. We received 2 incredibly iconic licenses in the form of Alien and Chucky, and while some disliked the latter, they were great additions to the game overall. We also received more quality of life improvements like the anti-camp mechanic, visual heartbeat, search bar, automatic blood web, and a long-awaited survivor activity HUD. No longer would you yell at your teammates for doing nothing, but instead for opening a chest in basement. Quite remarkable. DBD Mobile also got re-released under NetEase in 2023, and it kinda outdid the base game. Incredible features like the Bloodpoint market were introduced, dancing emotes, more creative skins, new Moris, and even custom game modes. Insane to me that it took a mobile version of DBD to encourage the developers to add some of these mechanics, but better late than never. And that's where we're caught up to 2024. While the year isn't over yet, we've seen a lot of great content added and changes made, including my beloved Billy receiving his overdrive mechanic. Beaver finally introduced new game modes like Chaos Shuffle, Lights Out, and 2v8, and they were really well received. Cross progression was added, and they also completely broke the game for a few months with the transition to Unreal Engine 5. But through it all, a big reason why I've stuck around so long is the amazing community of DBD, at least when we're not shouting at each other all the time. We've seen tons of community events over the years. To just name a few, the best of the best tourney, countless competitive tournaments, and even the amazing Light in the Fog event. When the community comes together, they can do amazing things. The amount of people I've met through DBD alone is crazy, and I don't regret a single second of it. Every trip or convention was such a fantastic experience for me. So many great content creators have made their impact on this game, and despite whether they still play it or not, I enjoyed my stay with everybody, and it wouldn't have been the same without you. That leaves us with the final few questions. Was Behavior lucky with DBD? Their other games come up short and don't even come close to their original success. Maybe they were lucky, and maybe they don't know how to recreate that original lightning in a bottle. But if Behavior is so lackluster, why do people still play? Whether it's a mix of nostalgia or naivete, DBD is still fun to me, and a big reason why people stick around is how far it's come since release. Over 33 chapters, countless maps and updates, DBD is nothing like 2016. And while some may miss it, we've come a long way, and I and many others still love this game. Thanks for listening to my long-winded video, and I do hope you all enjoyed watching. Cheers.